audio description writer Justin Soul, and you're listening to the Audio Description Narrators of America Know Your Narrator series.
Welcome to the Audio Description Narrators of America Know Your Narrator bonus episode. Today, we're very happy to have Kensuke Nakamura with us. He is an audio description writer, and thanks for joining us, Kensuke.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
What do you love about audio description?
So I guess I'll start with a story. I had a crush on this person. Their name is Bex Leon. They're a social work policy advisor and disability consultant and accessibility advisor. And I thought this person was very cool. And I'm like, oh, I want to get to know this person. So I asked, hey, do you want to have dinner and a movie or something? And that's when I first learned about descriptive audio. And I had to do a little bit of research, but we've had many dates so far. I've been dating them for a few years. And I really love that we can just have dates, watch a movie, experience a very relatively similar movie, and talk about it afterwards. We've been to a lot of opening nights at Marvel movies and stuff. So yeah, I love that descriptive audio allows me to have a normal dating experience with this person. I also, as a writer, I really love descriptive audio or audio description as a creative challenge. I really love watching a scene and being like, okay, what's going on here? Like, I described a Miyazaki movie and I was like, okay, so the monster shoots a laser and it makes a big explosion, but I'm watching it and I'm like, what's the feeling that they're trying to evoke? What are the best words to convey this? I'm like, the creature's mouth glows and fires a beam of light that ignites the horizon in a bubble of fire. And I'm like, yeah, that feels a lot better. So I just really love it as a creative challenge and experience. And as a person who's very interested and cares about social justice, I think that audio description for movies, TV, and theater art is very important because our culture is very influenced by art, and art is integrated into like the conversation. So, this year people might talk about, oh, it feels like with the pandemic, we're in the upside down. It feels like COVID Thanos snapped and half the jobs disappeared. Or people might talk about being out in San Francisco looking like Blade Runner. There's a really great meme I saw a few months ago that said, this is the vibe at restaurants that are reopening. And it was a picture of a few men at a dining table having a good time, but it was a scene from Alien that had a very iconic dinner. And if people have seen Alien, they know what that's about. So I think these things are it's part of the cultural conversation. And when people use these metaphors or analogies, it creates a sense of common understanding. And you're like, oh yeah, I like this person. They have some of the same thoughts that I do, and I feel closer to them. So I feel like when movies or TV are inaccessible to a significant part of the population, that creates a system where they're not completely involved. So I think the more accessibility we have, the more integrated our whole society can be.
Oh, wow. Very cool to hear all of that. And it's great to hear from the beginning of, your connection with them when you're on a date to society at large, that audio description access to this content, to this culture helps that conversation. You said it so eloquently. Thanks for sharing that, Kensuke. Can you talk about some of the challenges that you've had with writing? You gave a great example with the glowing and the description. What's your background in writing, and how is that the same or maybe different when it comes to audio description?
So I guess I got started writing with just image description on this post. Like I mentioned, this person, Bex, they're very cool, but when I first met them, an early post I saw on Facebook was, if you're going to be my Facebook friend, you need to put image descriptions on everything you post. And I'm like, oh, I guess that's just something I have to do now. And it's, it was for a selfish reason, but I also understand that, oh, yeah, like if I want to make sure that everyone is included in the conversation, I have to put image descriptions on everything. So it was a little scary at first, just taking that first step, but there were some resources available to me to look it up, and I took to it pretty quickly, and I really enjoy looking at a picture and being like, okay, what's the broad what's the broad strokes? What's the most important thing I need to tell about this picture? And then what are some important details? And then if I feel like continuing, I'll just keep going until I get to the small stuff eventually. And then I'm sure many people have had this experience. I went to a lot of movies with them, and the descriptive audio device wasn't working, or we'd watch an older movie that didn't have any descriptive audio. So I'd end up, doing extemporaneous audio description in their ear while we were watching the movie. So that's kind of how I got started. So I feel like I've had a few years of just developing how to write descriptions and know what to include and what can be inferred from the sound effects and that sort of thing. As far as challenges, something that's ongoing that I feel like I've been running into more is knowing how to describe people. And like one small thing that's kind of inconsequential is how do I describe hair length? And I feel like once you get past ear length, that can be kind of difficult, because between buzzed hair and ear length, there's a lot of hair that can be hard to describe. Like all 5 James Bonds have very different hair, but it's styled differently, but they're about the same length. And I have a hard time describing that. But I think more importantly, I think about representation. And I know that they used to say, don't describe someone's skin color unless it's important to the plot. And then if you do, describe everybody's skin color. But, it's always important to somebody. So, some people might watch Dead Poets Society and they're like, oh, it's not important that all of these characters are white. But to a lot of people that don't feel represented, it is very important that everybody's skin tone is white. But so I've been using white, pale, tan, black, brown, dark brown, light brown. But then I was describing the Dune trailer and I saw an Asian person and I said, okay, well, how do I describe this? Because they're light skinned, but they're clearly Asian. And then I'm like, okay, so do I have to describe what it is about them that lets me know that they're Asian? And then I think about, what does Asian mean in the world of Dune, where I assume there is no Asia? And so then I think about, do we describe them based on what the actor is? But then that's giving information that you might not necessarily just see. But I think this is important information for representation, for a Black person to watch a movie and be like, okay, that person does look like me, or a Filipino person to watch a movie and hear, oh, there's like, say, a brown skinned person, and they say, oh, is that brown skinned person like me or not? So I think this is an important and complicated conversation that is ongoing and that we should have and figure out. And might not be a clear right answer, but I hope we can move towards that.
Oh, that's great. And knowing that this representation is happening in the discussion, the audio description discussion, that's where you and I met, and how, at least on social media, and how that seems to be coming up a lot more often. And I love how you said that it's important and it's complicated, that this isn't just a headline or a short tweet to answer and be done with it, that it's the conversation is happening. I'd love to go back to what you said earlier about the first time that you started writing alt text. I'm curious how you could share with someone else who might find that first step scary too. What would you share with someone else who may be curious about this, but have some resistance, or maybe hold back, like, oh, what if I do it wrong? Or could you talk a little bit about that experience?
I think a lot of people initially find this, that they're like, oh, I don't want to do it wrong. But just know that any image description is better than nothing, because if somebody's like, hey, had a great day, and there's an image with no alt text or no image description, I'll be like, I don't know what that great day entails, but that could be as easy as saying selfie in daylight with a donkey or something. And people could be like, oh, the great day was having to do with this donkey that you met. So anything simple is a good place to start. And then, as you feel more comfortable, you can start adding in details like, oh, it's a sunny but overcast day, and I'm smiling and I'm squinting in the sunlight, or this donkey has, an apple in its mouth or something like that. So yeah, you just build with what's obvious, and then add details, but also there's resources. I think there's a blog post, I think Living with Disability, all about image descriptions that'll give you a good step-by-step on how to go about writing an image description. And like I said, it's starting with the broad strokes and then moving on to detail as you have energy for it. And, some people just don't have a lot of energy. So there's also People's Image Description, which is a Facebook page that you can join to post your own images and say, hey, I want to post this. I don't have the energy to describe it right now. And there's hundreds of volunteers that'll just step in and describe that image for you. There's a lot of memes on that page, but also people post personal things.
One of the cool things that you've been doing, specifically on the Facebook group, is creating your own audio description content for content that might not have audio description. That you're really stepping up and providing that. Can you talk about how that got started, or what was the motivation behind that?
Yeah, sure. So earlier this summer, I realized I do want to do audio description professionally. And so right away, I'm like, okay, well, I have to start somewhere. So I wrote about 5 scripts, like full-length scripts with descriptive audio, and I applied to some places, and I didn't hear anything back. And I'm like, okay, well, the next step is I've got to start creating presence for myself online. And I just looked and I saw that if you Google like audio described trailers, there's maybe like a handful in the past few years available on YouTube. And so I just saw that that's a place that has a need that I could fill. They're relatively quick to do compared to full-length audio description, and I'm not as concerned about getting the rights and making sure that I can distribute it correctly. But also, I've loved trailers for my entire life. I used to just like, when DVDs first came out and you could watch the trailer for the movie that you bought, I would watch the trailers over and over again. And I think when Spider-Man 2's trailer came out, I watched that over and over and over to where I like spoiled the movie to myself. So now I try to be a little bit more careful about, if it's a movie I definitely want to watch, I'm going to try to avoid seeing the trailer. But so I've already had a love for trailers and the nuance of it, but also it's a very difficult thing for our audio description, because they are by nature like montage where you're seeing little clips of a whole bunch of different scenes, and they're trying to give you a lot of different information about the movie. Like, oh, you might see this character, you're going to see this action scene, you'll be so excited to see how this ends up, and they give you a lot to salivate over, and they give you a lot of teases and things. So that's really hard to describe, especially if there's a lot of dialogue in the trailer as well. So I wanted to do that just as an exercise to figure out what's the most important things to say in the trailer. But then I wanted to go through again and do the expanded description where I can describe every little thing that's in the trailer, because there are trailer breakdowns online for like fan sites where they're like, oh, did you catch this thing? Did you see in the latest Star Wars trailer this thing happened, and what might that mean? But those are fan speculation, and it has a lot of assumptions about what you know or don't know or can see. So I wanted to just do an expanded trailer where it's like, I'm just going to tell you exactly what you see on the screen without making any theories about what might be happening. I just want to let you know everything that's there.
Very cool. Where would you like to see audio description headed if you were to have your dream world?
I think this is the same answer a lot of people have, but I just want it to be easily accessible and universal. And I checked out that Spectrum app, and I really like that. If they could expand that to have every movie that's possibly available, that'd be a great resource for people to know. Okay, if I just go to this app, I'll be able to get audio description for any movie that has it. Or it'd be cool if there's universal standards. And I think you is it Kevin's process are working on that as well.
Yeah, it's changed to Kevin's Way now.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, Kevin's Way. Yeah. So I think that's a really cool thing. But yeah, I want audio description to be easily accessible up front. You don't have to go to the manager and talk to them, or you don't have to call Comcast and figure out why it's not working. I think that's the obvious thing, but like I was talking about earlier with representation, I would like this conversation to be had, and it might be a thing where the director and the actor and a disability consultant talk together about, okay, how are we going to describe your character when it comes up in the audio description? And it may be a combination of the person's actual background and also the character's background. And a thing I've been thinking about is, how do we describe old movies where there's some less than good representation? If there's yellowface in the movie, like, how do you say, okay, well, there's this character here that's Asian, but they're clearly not played by an Asian person? And that might be something for, I think, scene setting, which was, I first heard about on Thomas Reed's podcast, but I know has been happening in the theater world for a long time, where you have like 10-15 minutes at the beginning of the movie to tell, what's the sort of technology you're going to see in this movie, who are the main characters, what are the settings you're going to see, what's the style of this movie. But then you can also add in this background information about, oh, this movie was made in the 80s and there was an Asian character that was played by a white man and it was done in this way, and maybe just give a little information about that in that context.
Everything that you're saying is just so exciting and so possible now with technology, and also with the interest of our audio description audiences of being so beyond simply grateful, but turning into audio description snobs, in the best sense possible. That here are so many access points that sighted people have taken for granted and now are being addressed for our audio description audiences. It's really exciting. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
Just self-promotion. I am just getting started in audio description writing, and I think I missed some of the training seminars that were available this summer. I hope to be doing more in the future, but I'm looking for work. So if anyone's looking for a fresh audio description writer, I've got some sample scripts I can send out, and you can check out my trailers. I'm on Instagram, Kensuke. It's a mix of my Japanese and Polish heritage. It's KENSUKEVIC on Instagram. You can just Google audio described trailers for Dune, Wonder Woman 84. You'll find my YouTube page, and you can find me on the audio description discussion page on Facebook.
Very cool, Kensuke. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to interview you. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been an honor.